Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of July 1st, 2015. I am your host, Jose Otero, and joining me this week, Brian Altano and Per Schneider. Did you just throw something?
Hello.
I flicked something.
He flicked something.
Okay, and this week we have a lot of news to talk about. We're going to kick things off with a Fire Emblem discussion on Fire Emblem Fates / Fire Emblem If, depending on what territory you live in. Then we're going to be talking about Splatoon and how tower control is coming this week, Reggie's response to the negative Metroid Prime Federation Force reaction, why you can't play as a woman in Zelda, the great Miiverse redesign of 2015, and so much more. So let's kick things off with Fire Emblem, which I started playing. And holy cow, I did not expect to like the opening 4 to 5 chapters of this game as much as I do.
I'm super jealous. I was traveling and, just basically I got back and have not seen anything yet on it.
Okay.
I'm very, very jealous. Don't spoil anything other than...
Well, what don't you want me to spoil?
Well,
I'm going to try and stay
don't spoil the story,
spoiler-light.
which I know in the Japanese version has you really on the edge of your seat.
Well, I'm using... he's trying to make fun of the fact that I don't read Japanese. Well, I'm using a lot of internet resources to
good.
get and some friends in Japan who I'll just be like, hey, what's this kanji?
Those games are so chatty, right?
Yeah, they are. So let me give you the lightest setup I can give you, because you do know the basis right now for this game is all about the two sides of a conflict, right? And how you're involved on both sides in a way. Yeah. So there's the Hoshido side, which is the family that gave birth to you.
The Greyjoys.
And there is the Nor family, which is
Starks.
the family that adopted you. But here's the thing. So this is split up between two factions, which is the Nor and the Hoshido, like I said. And the two copies of the game that are out there are Conquest, which is the Nor version, or Birthright, which is the Hoshido version.
Right.
What I love is that the story kicks off with a dream where both sides are fighting over you, and you don't have the full context of like why. And you actually start on the Nor side. But what I found interesting is that even though the Nor are dark characters, like the box to the Nor is like a dark, like purple, like blue. You expect them to be bad or evil. Mm-hmm. They are like this lovable cast of siblings. But the king is not the nicest man in the world, and there is a conflict between them and the Hoshido. Mm-hmm. I like the opening because right from the get-go, I felt like I am going to have a hard time deciding what side I want to be on, because these people are likable. They are very much likable. So, I'm not a fan of this king, but these people are very, very likable. And when they take you to the Hoshido side, the same thing happens. They're all very likable.
So that's really cool, because I was a little bit worried that it was going to be more like kind of Force Unleashed or something, right? Like the games where you choose the light and the dark side, and then you are kind of part of this brutal, more darker storyline where, like I always feel bad, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm curious about doing the bad stuff and sneaking into people's houses, stealing stuff, but then I eventually get to this point where I always make the kind of the righteous decision, and I can't follow that path.
You end up playing as a very flawed, awful, mostly good person.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And so like you're never fully in, and that might be a personal choice. There may be evil people out there who really enjoy the dark side.
But this game's really about
But it's not like that.
It's deciding between kind of your family, your real family that sucks, or this adopted family that's pretty cool.
No, I think your real family is also very cool. I haven't found what's wrong with the Hoshido 100% yet. The conflict is that you're going to have to choose. So these two countries, these two factions are at war, or they're on the verge of war. And during the course of the early chapters, obviously that is going to pop off in some way.
Right.
An event will spur that, and then you are put in the decision to choose. And based on what side you choose depends on how it impacts gameplay. Apparently, as someone who grew up on the North side, you have an ability, which the rough translation is the Dragon's Vein. But basically, you have an ability to sort of alter the terrain of battle using like dragon-like power. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, in the dream sequence, the Nor are separated from their leader. And all of them are separated across a bridge that's broken. They're like, we can't get across. And one of them uses the Dragon's Vein to take out all the water. So basically the water gets evaporated and then they cross. You can terraform and alter certain places in certain battles with that ability. Your character, which you customize, by the way. You can customize hair, look. They've done a better job of that. I especially like that if you hold the L button on the 3DS, it will skip the animations for battle. So you know how in Fire Emblem you had the customization to switch off the 3D
options.
animation for battles when you actually did the face-off. Yeah. It'll leave it in sort of the overhead 2D state. You just see the two characters collide and then health bars fall. It looks a lot more classic, like the GBA Fire Emblems in that way. I like that that's a shortcut because you are in positions where sometimes you want to get through that stuff and sometimes you don't. You just don't want to have it.
Also, when you're facing a weaker enemy, usually you're like, fine, you know, you just want to skip it.
UI is also very much more intuitive, where on the D-pad is options to switch through camera. So like one's cinematic, one is a first-person camera, one is, you know, showing every character, another is highlighting another difference. And then the face buttons in the battle animation sequence will fast forward, pause. Pause is really helpful because then if you're a Miiverse poster, you can just quickly just take your screenshot, put it up on Miiverse if that's what you do. And I like that about it.
God, now you make me feel like I should be importing a small new 3DS.
Well, you can read the language. I don't know how you don't use those GM money resources
because I was
for the power of good.
Protesting.
And this podcast.
Oh, man.
You could be talking
so
about this right now. So I'm very jealous of Japan right now because Japan got Rhythm Heaven Tengoku the best. Rhythm Tengoku the Best Plus, which we talked about last week in June. They just got Fire Emblem a week ago, and they're getting Animal Crossing in like a few more weeks.
So that's the thing, right? Nintendo platforms are one of the last places in the world where that sort of Japan is, you know, way ahead of us thing is still kind of happening.
Yeah.
It's definitely not happening on Microsoft. It's definitely not happening on PC, aside from like a few strange titles here and there. And it's not really happening on PlayStation. I feel like the US and Europe are more
Dragon Quest Heroes came out over there.
There's
first.
a couple things,
but there's a few exceptions.
But we're kind of like there's been a lot of trend with that with Nintendo, where we're seeing stuff in Japan first.
Sure, but we're seeing a lot less Japanese games on those other platforms. Let's be fair. Yeah, there are fewer. Excuse me. There are fewer Japanese games on those platforms. And localization takes time. I mean, I get it, right? But it's a shame because we don't get this game until 2016. Sure. And it is. I love the setup. I love everything that I've encountered so far about it. I'm very much enjoying. And it's just very unfortunate.
All right, fine. I'm gonna have to import one.
Wow.
Well, no, it's going to take too long to get that out
here. The GM declares.
2016 is a long time.
Fire Emblem games are so freaking awesome. Yeah. I got to play it now.
No, this one, I'm definitely feeling it. You should definitely check it out. We'll have a written preview on the site where we will try to gracefully tiptoe around the details of this thing. So look out for that, hopefully next week.
Cool.
All right. Lastly, I guess we should just jump into news because why not, right? I did want to talk about... remember last year you and I played a game from Nintendo's Game Seminar 2014 or 13, and it was involving a pigeon and trying to find a mate. Do you remember that? Do you remember that moment? I forgot what the game was called.
Yeah, pigeon something.
There's a Let's Play on IGN about it. We actually called it the worst Let's Play on IGN because we did not know what we were doing.
Oh, really?
Yes.
The game doesn't make it easy for you to figure out what the heck you're doing.
Yeah. Basically,
most pigeon-based games are a little strange. I don't know if you noticed that.
Check our top 100 pigeon-based games if you want to see.
Hatu Full Boyfriend is another one.
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, so Nintendo released in Japan again this year. They released a new batch of Game Seminar games from last year's summit. And one of the ones that I'm playing, I don't have a title for it. I could actually look it up while we're talking about it. But I love the concept behind it. So it is that you are a student in class and you are passing notes to someone else on the other side of the room. And so using the gamepad, you basically play each kid in this little like relay
is it,
path to that.
Is it like WarioWare where like the teacher can't see you doing it? Or,
yeah, you don't want the teacher to see you. So on the television is the teacher pacing back and forth in front of the blackboard, and you see the whole layout of the classroom. And the kid who has the note, you see sweat like beating down his head because he has to get rid of it. And then you see the kid on the other side of the room that he or she is trying to get the note too. And when the teacher isn't looking, you take the gamepad, it's all motion-based, but you take the gamepad, and if you have to pass the note to the kid in front of you, you just hold it forward when the teacher isn't looking. And if the teacher looks, you try to put it back. If he catches you, he yells at you. And you get 3 strikes, and then I guess you get detention. I don't know. I can't read Japanese. But you hand it. When you go to hand it, you see the other player's hand on the screen taking the note. So you have to like pick up the note, pass it to the next kid. Now you're playing as the next kid. And it's like, okay, I need to pass it to the right. So when the teacher's not looking, you use motion, you turn to the right, pass it to that kid. Then if you need to pass it behind you, you actually have to hold the gamepad behind you.
That's
and
great.
You hear a chime that the kid behind you took the note.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's very clever. I mean, it's not a full game, but I like the concept. Every once in a while, you hear the teacher in his lecture like, and he just paces back and forth.
That's really funny.
It's very mischievous. I kind of like that.
Brian, how do you feel about video games duplicating the most stressful moments in real life? Are you on?
I think it's a great idea. I think if Nintendo made a WarioWare that's just about how stressful it is being a kid at school. And it was just broken down into different things, like, you know, one level you're in gym class and you're slower than everybody else because you're in bad shape.
Is that? Do you want to talk more about
No,
that?
I was
Okay.
actually.
All right.
He lived it.
I was a very fit boy. then I discovered food.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great idea because that's like I love all these little one-off ideas, but without like the sort of WarioWare franchise to keep them all, I'm afraid like I don't know where they go because they don't.
Well, they go on like Rhythm Heaven. Like you got a taste of that there.
Yeah,
right?
which I love, right? Which I'd love to see.
But it stays in Japan for right now.
And I love Nintendo at their most weird and creative when it comes to stuff like that. They're just like I like the idea of these people working on small games that take advantage of the gamepad, but like where do they go, you know?
Yeah, there are few
Well,
companies
sadly-
that make these
Oh,
weird
go ahead.
compilations. Sega, obviously,
Yeah.
used to do these weird things too, you know.
Yeah, what was the one at the
Well, I forgot the name of
Touch
that.
the Magic?
Crazy,
Feel the Magic?
Feel the magic.
Yeah, on
Their
the
launch
DS,
game.
but even before that, on the Dreamcast, they had crazy compilations with like weird mini games mixed together, and it's cool. Like WarioWare kind of continued that torch, and
I
Rhythm,
love that because
Rhythm Tango
sometimes a
too.
game idea is just small enough to contain itself.
and it's funny, and it's like the controls are good, but you can't blow it up into something
and
bigger.
it doesn't need to be turned in this whole 10-hour event or anything.
Yeah.
But it's just like a little bite-sized thing, and then it goes, you know, jumps to the next
Yeah.
thing. So
And
it's
that's
really
what I
cool.
like about it. Just that it is smaller. It does have like other modes that I still haven't tried. I just messed around with it one night and found it very charming. That said, I do think it is a missed opportunity because of the financial investment in games. That a game seminar where these you know college students or game designers, budding game designers, make something cool is isolated only to Japan for appreciation because it would cost money to localize it. It would cost time and money to localize it and put it out here. That said, I wish Nintendo would open the doors for a Nintendo Game Seminar or hold one. You have an American base for this company. Why not do something like that
Yeah, it's a
in
cool
the
idea.
States and put those games out the same way you're doing it in Japan?
Didn't they have a relationship with DigiPen and they did some stuff like that?
They did, but I don't think they've ever released that stuff publicly.
Yeah,
For
now
example,
with-
like Narbacular Drop, wasn't that a DigiPen
I think
joint?
it
That
was,
was
yeah.
basically the setup for Portal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we heard from actual third parties after the Wii U launch that they couldn't even get their hands on dev kits in time to make launch games. So I think that that's sort of a company thing that needs to happen across the board where they sort of like lift the padlocks a little
Well,
bit.
they have web framework now, right? Like, so
Yeah,
there are
you can build
things
it
you
on
can do
anything.
with that. Certainly on the Wii U to release software like that. I would love to see that. I mean, it's cool, you know, for a student to get an audience on their game. Like, especially if there was some sort of feedback mechanism, I think be really gratifying.
Yeah, and especially in this day and age where like there is early access on Steam or things
Yep.
like that. Like, why not try something like that or just get something like that here? I kind of wish they would.
I mean, they actually had a quote I read. I forget where I read it. That Nintendo was interested in doing early access type stuff.
That's right. Yeah, Damon Baker said that.
Yeah, that they've been looking at that business model, which is weird because it's sort of the opposite of like Nintendo games are always so polished.
Yeah,
by the
and
time you
those
play
are
them.
broken.
But I do like the idea of sort of like, and I think that the audience on the eShop is there. The cool thing about the eShop that I really like is that you can take a game like Shovel Knight or BitBoy or whatever and put it next to Mario Kart and put it up there all at the same time. So I think people would be receptive to that if they just took those small ideas and threw them up there. So that'd be cool to see.
All right, so let's switch on over to news then, and we're going to kick things off with Tower Control is coming to Splatoon. So if you remember, back when we saw the Splatoon Direct, they sort of put out the news that we'll be supporting this game with DLC, free DLC. Before I get into this, I just remembered this weekend is Splatfest. If you haven't participated in that, basically the entire theme of the tower, the plaza area is going to be nighttime based. There'll be different music.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and
Cool.
you are
We still haven't
playing for a
played.
side.
No, we haven't.
I've played with Jose,
He has.
who's deadly.
Very.
You're good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard.
I haven't played in a bit.
I haven't played
need
in
to
a
pick
bit
it
either.
back
I
up.
definitely want to jump back on this weekend.
Okay, let's do
It's
it.
a
We
fun
should.
game. I played
Yeah.
Mario Kart last night, and
Yep.
you know, it's things run smoothly.
Yeah,
you know.
no,
So
absolutely.
what is like they've been doing these events, like they've been eventizing
So
this
remember
game.
that
What does
the
that do?
Splatfest event is focused around two teams, where you
Okay.
basically choose Team Cat or Team Dog. And I like how they roll things out in that. And this has nothing to do with Tower Control, but we're going to come back to it. I like how once you pick a side, they give you a special shirt that has 4 perk slots, and your job is to spend the week updating, like getting that shirt ready for when everything goes down because you have to wear that shirt to participate. And once the Splatfest is over, you give that shirt back in. And at the next Splatfest, you start from zero. That said, the first one in North America, I believe, is cats versus dogs. In Japan, it's hilarious because they've had two. The first week was rice and what looked like some kind of breaded thing. But this week's was even better. This week was two flavors of like actual udon noodles.
Of ramen, right?
Yeah.
I saw that.
Noodles.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and those are
really
real
cool.
products that we're talking about
That's
here.
awesome.
Which I almost wonder, like, you want to do like Captain Crunch versus
Coke
like
versus Pepsi.
Yeah,
They'd
Coke,
have to do in
Pepsi.
America.
Well,
Oh,
I bet
man.
they will do. No, I think
Captain
they'll
Crunch?
do two things in the same product family. So like
Right.
Kit Kat strawberry versus
right.
standard or something. Yeah.
That's the Big Mac versus the McNuggets.
Exactly.
Oh, dude.
Big Mac's
but not
gonna
the Big
take
Mac
that.
versus the Whopper. Both are gross.
Yeah.
We all lose. So I almost killed Brian. Tower control is a new mode that will be added to Splatoon at
Now I
7
feel like a
p.m.
Big Mac.
Really?
Yeah, I'm totally
Why?
hungry. I'm hungry now.
You
All right.
can't eat those.
First the Fire Emblem, now you're talking about a Big Mac.
I can't eat those.
Big Macs are
Coming
delicious.
Coming back. So the new mode is coming out on July 1st at 7 p.m. That's the day this was recorded.
Getting
The
some food.
objective of
The
tower
GM
control. Come back. The objective of tower control is to ride a single floating tower into the enemy's base. So you color this tower, it floats around. You're trying to float it into the enemy base essentially, and so whoever dominates it, it sort of goes the other direction.
Oh, okay. That's,
So it's
that's
all
cool.
about projectiles, really.
Pretty much.
Like,
Well, you can
yeah.
put a brave soul can ride the tower across, but they're a number one target because
Yeah.
they're just sitting there.
You'd have to get up there with. I mean, the roller was.
yeah.
You couldn't get that from the ground, really.
Roller and brush are going to be pretty useless in this mode,
Yeah.
right?
They might be,
unless it's about taking out the opposition on the
Well, think
the
about
bottom
it.
floor.
To keep people from shooting at the tower, you can always use like a roller to sneak up on them and just, or even the brush. The brush you can roll up on someone.
Yeah, but I
really
assume
fast.
people are going to get height. Well, we'll see.
We'll
It's
see how it
interesting.
plays
Yeah,
out.
I want to check that out.
It definitely depends on the map. I think your thinking is absolutely right.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to finally try it out. There was a Treehouse Live showing off footage of it the other day. If you're listening to this and you're not sure, why don't you check that out? All right, our second story this week is a response from Nintendo. Speaking to Mashable, Reggie responded to the negative Metroid Prime Federation Force criticism, basically pointing out the fact that, yes, it was a negative reception. You cannot sugarcoat that. And those are roughly his words.
Yeah.
And this is where it takes a bit of a turn for the worse. This is an example where fans who weren't able to get their hands on the game may be at a bit of a competitive disadvantage. Everyone who has played what we are showing regarding Metroid Prime, they've come across really pleased. My ask is that fans trust us. So I do want to say the last part of his answer, I think Nintendo to some degree deserves a bit more trust with that game. It did not show well. Yes, it is on them to prove to you, the consumer, why you should be interested. And they failed at that. But for me, that trust is there.
But it's two things. It's less about the actual game there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more about what the expectations were going into E3
Sure.
and how franchise care works, right? Like people are frustrated with, Earthbound not being a thing anymore, but at least you're getting like re-releases.
Yeah, but
with Metroid, it's like everybody loved that game. It is on many people's top 5 lists
Okay,
of the best
right.
games ever
Okay,
made.
but-
Super Metroid, Metroid Prime, you're going into a big show, you're expecting a big announcement, and then you get that,
But
right?
time out, Mr.
That's what hurt the game.
Yeah, but look at you. Like, remember when we talked about this petition that roughly 20,000 people have signed to get this game canceled? What's the good in that?
No, my viewpoint hasn't changed on that. It's stupid to say,
Well, give people
"Hey,
the viewpoint.
game that I never, I haven't played, cancel it because I don't want it to exist." That's silly,
Yeah.
right? Like the development of that game is not taking away from the creation of a new Metroid game because that team would have never worked on a Metroid Prime full game.
That is
right?
so important that you stress that.
Yeah.
It's so important that you stress that because one does not mean one does not create the absence of the other, right?
Right.
They don't cancel each other out.
But I do think Nintendo deserves criticism for
Absolutely.
being so blind to the fans asking for either a 2D Metroid game in the traditional vein or in the how the Game Boy games have been, or a Metroid Prime game like that we saw on the Wii and the GameCube before. Like I think they are tone deaf to that.
Yeah, they are tone deaf to that, and let's be fair in that what they showed looked like it just was not ready to be shown.
And then it didn't help that the game they didn't do a good job showing what the game would be.
Yeah, no, that's been the reality.
If I was Nintendo, I would work on this game, do it whatever I want to do it. At the same time, I would call Yacht Club and I'd say, here's a couple $1 million, make us a Metroid. Or I'd call the guys that did Guacamelee and I'd say, make us a Metroid. Run with the art style, go crazy with it, do something cool, give us a cool 2D Metroid. We want it to run on 3DS and we want it to run on Wii U. Because there are a billion Metroidvania games being made by incredibly talented studios right now, and Nintendo's not doing any of it.
Totally agree. And Sunday before E3 was the template on how you pull off a spin-off announcement without pissing off the fan base.
Yeah, sure.
And that was Fallout and Fallout Shelter. Fallout Shelter,
Yes.
in the end, is not that great of a game, but nobody's angry that it exists.
Yeah,
you know,
because you could play it right now.
Because here's Fallout 4 and it looks amazing, and guess what? Right now you can play this, and that to me is a smart announcement around creating spin-offs.
Do you want to say
No,
something?
I do want to say something. I'm so glad
you're
you're
mad
at
at
me
me
Did we
already.
derail
No,
you?
I'm not,
Did we
I'm
totally
not.
derail you?
No, you didn't derail anything. I will not say.
That's too bad.
I will say I politely disagree with you on. Yes, companies like Yacht Club and companies like the ones you mentioned can be
Drinkbox,
trusted.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Drinkbox could be trusted with a Metroid, but I think knowing the way Nintendo handles their franchises, knowing that it's constant check-ins, knowing that it's approval from like how many different people involved on a series, that gets hard. Like that's going to eat up a lot of a company's time. I do think that they should trust someone with it, just the way they trusted Tecmo Koei with Hyrule Warriors.
Right.
Which who the heck thought that would be a thing?
Well, they
I think
did that already,
I will agree
right?
with you.
They
Yeah.
already did this with a Metroid game, and that one isn't universally
And it didn't go very
loved.
well.
But,
Let's talk about that.
But
Not that Drinkbox
But
or
they
those
are-
other guys wouldn't. I
Sure.
think you're right on that.
I never looked at Ninja Gaiden and said, I want these guys to do a Metroid
No,
game.
exactly.
Like, Ninja Gaiden was fun because of like the speed and the violence, but it was like to me that the last games were really broken. Like the camera and everything, I'm like, oh, don't get that close. Don't get that team near my Metroid games is what I would have thought.
Right.
Whereas like I look at chair games or Drinkbox or like chair made Shadow
Or
Complex.
Axiom Verge
I'm like
or-
Shadow Complex is Metroid. Like
Yeah.
if that had just Metroid characters, people would have loved
Yeah, but
it,
this,
right?
but this comes back to an argument we've had constantly on this show where I feel like we've talked about how there are so many Metroid lookalikes out there. There are so many in the spirit of Metroid. Would you really just be satisfied with more of the same of what you've seen rather than something that would test those boundaries and
At
try
this
something
No,
point-
because
different?
I like. Do you guys remember those? There were concept art sketches of I believe it was Way Forward was working on a Metroid game
Yeah, yeah.
briefly,
They
and
pitched-
it was
they
like
pitched
it was
Nintendo.
kind of chibi styled. It was like very.
There's one place that wants to make a Metroid game. I would absolutely believe it's Way Forward.
Yeah.
Keep going.
They love those
It
games.
had like
yeah.
an exaggerated art style. I think there's a way to do it, and also, don't get too mad at me on this one, but let's not put Metroid games on the biggest Metroidvania pedestal in the world, because there was Super Metroid and there was Zero Mission, and those were the best in the franchise. The original has not aged well. The Game Boy game has aged terribly, and
Sure, that's fair.
Fusion is not that hot. Like I would put Guacamelee and Shovel Knight above Fusion in terms of
Ooh, that's where we
in terms of
disagree.
platforming games.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, Shovel Knight's not really a Metroidvania game.
Yeah.
Guacamelee certainly is,
Yeah.
but I don't think that game is incredibly that great. So we're looking at this franchise kind of with rose-tinted goggles, whereas I feel like getting a newer studio now that it's been making Metroidvania games for a few years and throwing them at that franchise and then checking in on them every few years is okay.
Yeah, and
but
I
that
think
takes
that's
time, and I think that at the end of the day, Federation Force showed because this is what they thought they'd have ready in time for whenever they plan to ship it. Either that or they just didn't have enough games to put into this thing, but we don't know that narrative. Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, we don't know the story behind the creation of this game, right?
don't.
Whether it's an example of here's a cool game concept. Hey, let's add characters from the Metroid universe because we have nothing else ready, or if it was conceived to be.
Okay, so we spoke to Tanabe, and his response was, "I've had the idea for this game for a very long time. I
Okay, so
wanted
it
to expand
started-
this universe."
But it started
Yeah.
as a Metroid franchise title. Then
Absolutely,
Okay.
it did.
Well, then they have no
it's
excuse.
a Metroid. It's a Metroid game where you are not playing as Samus, and I think, and we've talked about this at length on this show. That was, as you say, and I agree with you, a poor choice when you haven't had a game in a while
Sure.
to announce that first.
Yeah.
Even if you show just a logo for the other game, but Nintendo didn't do that, right? When was the last time you saw a Nintendo Direct, a Nintendo anything? And it was a logo, and then nothing.
But let's also not forget that sometimes this stuff works out, right? Like sometimes, like you want a new Mario game, you get Mario Party, and you're like, oh, right. But sometimes you get a Smash Brothers, or you get a Mario Kart that was a spin-off from the Mario franchise, where like 10 years later, you're like, you don't even consider them to be the same thing. And that's why I welcome spin-offs like even if they're in the Metroid franchise like that. And I have no problem with Tecmo developing a Metroid spin-off and trying their luck, because something good may come out of it. But in this case, it is just that there are 2 templates for amazing Metroid games. You could have done either one.
Yeah.
And like, you can't just ignore that franchise. You can't ignore how popular Samus is in Smash Brothers. And I know, I know the Metroid franchise is not the top-selling franchise, and it didn't do that well in Japan.
That's the challenge.
But they were also under market. Like, Metroid Prime did not have a huge marketing budget behind it the way like Halo did and Call of Duty did and Battlefield did. You cannot expect those same numbers out of that.
They tried as hard as they could to get Metroid Prime in as many hands as possible. They bundled it with the GameCube at one point when it hit $99.
Yep.
They tried everything they could to push that game.
But the budgets behind Metroid were tiny compared to first-person shooters and action adventures from other companies.
Okay, but that's not.
And don't even get me started on how pissed people were when they announced that game to begin with.
Oh yeah,
a Metroid Prime, a Metroid
we
first-person
talked
shooter.
about that, and how the internet said
and
IGN was lying when IGN said, nope, this is
it's
real.
good.
And Prime,
it's a thing.
Well, it was a weird thing, right?
Yeah,
but Prime 2 and Prime 3 definitely did not get the dollars that you would put behind a AAA franchise. And I think that, Mario has much more of the goodwill and the character recognition. You don't actually have to market those titles quite as hard as you would a Metroid. And that's why I feel like it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg story when people say, well, Metroid is not as big of a franchise, so it's understandable they don't renew the franchise. And it will never be if you don't franchise care with it that you do with Mario.
Well, yes and no. Because I think you can do all that. You can do the fan service forever for mid 30-year-old man babies and up. Like everyone in this room.
I am at 40s. Thank you very much.
Like everyone in this room. You can keep making the same game every year forever, because gamers who are all future facing and they want evolution and change, they want more powerful systems. The reality is they don't want anything to change ever. They want things to be safe forever. And our reality, is that in our 30s, by the time you are 30-something years old on this planet, everything that you grew up loving has been ruined by somebody else eventually. Everything. Transformers, they made 4 pieces of Transformers movies.
Easy.
Point Break, one of my favorite movies growing up. They're remaking that now. It's not even about surfing anymore. There's 3 Jurassic Park movies. They just made Jurassic World, which I actually really liked. But every single thing gets rebooted and
favorite
killed
moment.
and murdered.
Kill him! No!
Yeah, every single thing that I loved growing up has been thrown into the dirt and regrown into something new for a younger audience to appreciate. Every single movie, every TV show, everything.
Here's my thing, though.
So why not Metroid? Why not do that to Metroid 2? Why not reboot that for a younger audience? It doesn't have the old connotations like us old fogies do about, you're a single pirate and you're lost by yourself. And again, devil's advocate here.
So wait, are you saying, is this in defense of Federation Force?
I think it's okay, because maybe not everything has to be for everyone in this room. I think sometimes maybe a 10-year-old kid wants to be like, I want to play a game called Blast Ball. Because you know what I wanted to do when I was 10 years old? Play games called Blast Ball. I wanted something dumb. I wanted to shoot, and I wanted to score goals. I wanted to go to space with a bunch of my friends.
You're preaching to the choir on this one, because I know I am very open for this Federation Force game. We talked about that last week. I get the feeling that you are, but you aren't sold on what it is yet, and they still need to show you that.
I'm fine with it, but I'm like, Metroid is one of my favorite franchises of all time.
Okay, and
it's
so
the same. Like
if being your favorite franchise of all time, what annoys me most in any conversation about Metroid is the fact that, and you sort of said this earlier, which is why I shot you that look, is that like just trust another studio to give me the same thing I've been getting all the time, and I don't think Metroid deserves that fate. I think Metroid deserves to be reinvented or some new idea, not a gimmick, not something silly, but a way to tap into something that is not just here's another open exploration game where you're just getting all of her powers back, because that became the criticism against that series from the beginning.
But Jose, I'm totally happy with spin-offs, and like that's what I'm saying. Like, I am so happy Mario Kart exists. I like when Mario Party first came out, it was great to get that, and that it wasn't rooted in the same gameplay. But I never once doubted at the time that the Mario franchise would continue. And with Metroid, I'm not so sure, because the rhetoric is not, hey, we're going to do this awesome Metroid game, and here's a spin-off, and, this is going to be really cool. The rhetoric is silence. Like, that is not right for that franchise.
Silence is condemning, although it has, everything is right about that franchise in silence. What are you talking about? I mean, in terms of, it's a quiet adventure. But listen, it does surprise me that Metroid has not found a bigger fan base, considering that the sci-fi angle for shooters or for any sort of adventure, at one point, especially during Prime 2 Echoes, that era was completely in vogue in the video game industry. It was. Everything that was cool was sci-fi. Nowadays, it's more gritty, realistic. Like, that has changed. First-person shooters still dominate, but at least the way they're presented, it's not quite as sci-fi as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I will say it did surprise me that despite having that period, being released in that period where that was the bomb, like it was the big deal, it didn't really do that hot.
Two big reasons. One, Prime 2, and like, you know, if anybody from Nintendo is watching, send us the details. But I remember Prime 2's marketing budget being laughable for a first-party title, from what I saw, and for being kind of like in that mainstream. Two, the games that were blowing up were the online shooters.
Yes.
Yeah, and they completely ignored
tried.
them.
I mean, like, people criticized Metroid Prime 2 for having multiplayer in it, right? Like, oh, that's not what I want in my Metroid game. But like, all the research from retailers said, no, you need to add multiplayer, otherwise your games are not going to sell. That's why, you know, everything from Assassin's Creed to, you know, Metroid had multiplayer. And then, you know, like, some of those games actually morphed into multiplayer-only games. Like, that's how you get your Titanfalls and all that, and evolves. But like, the combination of Halo being a good single-player campaign game and having awesome multiplayer is what sold the
It wasn't
the
just four
franchise,
Samuses
right?
running around a backyard or whatever. Metroid
No, and
Prime
it was
2.
Metroid's
So
multiplayer was very limited. And the same happened with Star Fox, right? Like, it had multiplayer just to have that stamp on the box, but nobody ever said, "Oh, you got to get this game and play it." You know, like, in multiplayer.
You know where you're going to play your next Metroid game? The same place you can play the next Castlevania game, Mega Man game,
On Kickstarter?
and Banjo-Kazooie game on Kickstarter.
You think
Stop
so?
it. Stop
That's
it
what's
right
gonna
now.
happen.
Stop spreading
no,
them lies.
when a first party does no longer cares, or when a company no longer cares about its IP, somebody working at the company or fans of that company's work makes it themselves, and they go on Kickstarter and they make enough money to sustain it. Because the reality is that we talk like this all the time, but we don't actually support these things. Mega Man wasn't selling enough, Castlevania wasn't selling enough, Banjo-Kazooie, none of these things had enough justification to get funding to be made. So they rebooted them, or they changed them, or they made, you know, they'll make Utroid or Netroid or whatever it is, and they'll put it on
Metroid,
Kickstarter.
Jesus.
And it'll be fun, it'll be fine.
Listen.
But the times are changing.
Yeah.
The digital age is upon us, and it is not that huge of a risk to create a 2D game now and distribute it digitally only.
Sure.
Like, not have it on store shelves.
Yacht Club Games kickstarted Shovel Knight. Within a year, it was playable and in stores, and it sold 750,000 copies.
So I agree with you. That speaks for the creation of a 2D game.
Yeah.
That is digital only, and like, you could pull that off with a Metroid game.
Yeah, and
like,
if you
very
did,
easily.
nobody would care about Federation Force anymore.
I know.
They wouldn't care. They wouldn't even think about it.
They
They'd
wouldn't
be
be
like, "That's for
angry about it.
kids.
Hopefully, they
This
care
one's
about it
for
if
me."
it's a good game, right?
Yeah.
No, they'd be too mad at Netroid or whatever Yacht Club made. You know, they'd find something else to get mad about.
This may sound silly though, and there's only one thing I do want to push back on that you said, because I agree with a lot of it.
Here we go.
I do, and maybe this is just the person that I am. And Per, feel free to correct me, because you're a GM, so maybe you win in this case. But I do find it unfair to be presumptuous that a company no longer cares about a franchise. I think that at the end of the day, silence hurts, and it is brand mismanagement. It is like franchise miscare. But I would not for a second believe that there are people at Nintendo who are like, we're done with Metroid. We're done with Metroid. I think there's just people struggling to figure out what that is, and I'll give them the benefit.
I agree with you on that, because
Yeah.
obviously, like, Samus has a big presence in Smash Brothers. She's got a bunch of levels. There's 2 Amiibo based on her now.
There you go.
She was in Nintendo Land.
Nintendo Land. Like, Samus pops up everywhere. Pops up in marketing.
Did you see the smirk
Yeah, I know.
that came out his face?
Oh, don't
when
get
he
me
said
started on
that?
a zero.
There are Samus references in Mario Kart.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just wanted to politely push back.
I totally get that she and Metroid are part of their lore and part of their history. Reggie wears a little, like, you know, it might
Samus
as well
pen.
be a middle finger, but it's a Samus pen.
Stop
What?
it.
Well, it's not a new Metroid game.
All
is it?
right, we're riled up on this podcast, so we're going to take a quick break. But Per, why don't you let it out before I what are you going to say?
It will just be long if I keep on
Okay,
ranting
so
about
we're
this.
gonna
But
let
it's
this
like,
go.
I totally agree with you. I think Metroid will be back, but I think part of being a first party that is the main and only supplier of your gaming platforms, like the biggest supplier, is taking care of these beloved franchises and making sure that we get updates, and like going with an indie who's great at making Metroidvania games makes all the sense in the world.
That's a free solution.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
yours.
think
could
it
help you find the
requires
next thing.
NOA to take a more active role in development, and it will require NCL to say, hey, it's okay if somebody overseas makes this game under NOA's
Yeah, put
oversight.
Tanabe on that
what,
game.
what
Tanabe
has
will
to
make
happen.
sure that game gets done right. All right, we're done. Gong. This is over. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a few more news stories to go to before we get into our first what if scenario. We'll be right back.
I love you guys.
Welcome back. Jose Otero here with Brian Altano and Per Schneider. And we have calmed down a little bit, but I think
What are
we're
you
going to lead
talking
off with another possibly controversial topic here.
Oh, God.
We ran a story yesterday that I asked a question at E3 about regarding why you can't play as a woman in Zelda Triforce Heroes. And I do want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about this story and the intent behind this story, because I feel like since I've hit publish on that story, it has raveled completely to some degree out of control, either in the comments or on message boards or even on Reddit to some degree.
Huh.
So when they showed Triforce Heroes, and I was watching this game back at E3, I remember being in the war room, seeing it for the first time and saying, I like this concept. I'm really on board with a co-op Zelda.
Yeah.
And then I saw the Zelda dress, and I'm just like, well, that's interesting. And I'm like, well, why is he wearing a Zelda dress? Like, I get the outfit angle. I see why that's important. There's a Zelda dress in the game, but will they let you play as a girl in this game? Was the thought that went through my mind. I was like, okay, let's find out. So we're talking to Hiromasa Shikata, who is the director on that game. Really nice guy. He was the director on A Link Between Worlds. And we took that question to him. First we probed a little bit. We asked, like, hey, this whole concept sounds very like MMO-ish Monster Hunter. Like, he's like, yeah, no, it is. But in our version of this, the outfit that you make gives you an ability. It enhances a weapon. It enhances an item. There's a bit more to it than just cosmetic. And I'm like, well, that's cool. It's not just stats. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. And I was like, well, then, I'd have to ask if it's inspired in some ways by Monster Hunter, why can you play as a female? And he said no. And he blamed their story. He said, quote, story calls for this sort of legend/prophecy where heroes will come together to help solve a problem. And in that, they are male characters. So because the game is set with that as the story background, you cannot choose a gender. You are a male character, which was kind of a blow to me because from what I'd seen in that trailer, nothing there. Look at your traditional Zelda for a second, right? There's a boy named Link who comes to the rescue. Yep. And the story, to some degree, helps me understand why it's a boy. Yeah. Having all these Links running around did not in one way do that for me.
Well, and there was Four Sword where it's one male Link who splits into four, and this is different. Look, I can see why you asked the question, right? Like, there are people out there who get riled up anytime a journalist asks the question, oh, can I play as a woman now, right? It's like, I don't know why, but there are people who feel insecure about that and feel like, oh, they're these social justice warriors, they're fighting for equality, and it's a fake kind of movement,
or it's a move towards
right?
gender politics.
No, and it's but it's
yeah.
like people also feel like it's disingenuous and fake, and you're just trying to please a certain portion of the audience by being super PC. And it's like, no, I think it's a great question. As a father of a girl and two boys, my daughter's eyes light up every time she can play as a female character. Yeah. Like that is a reality today that gamers of all sexes want to have games cater to them. And like when she saw the Fallout presentation where the female character goes to the front and goes, okay, my turn, she's like, yeah, right? Yeah. Like we're talking about a 14-year-old girl here who's really happy with that because traditionally a lot of heroes were just male. And so I think the question in a multiplayer-focused game, can you play as a female character, especially when there's a dress you can wear, I think is completely justified. And like it shouldn't rile people up and piss people off. At the same time, like it's fine for the designer to say, you know what, we still see this as a Link-driven story. Like,
and that
I don't
should
think
have been
there's
the
anything...
answer. I think it's a shame for Shikata because I don't think he was prepared for it. And I have two regrets on this story that I'm going to air right here. Number one, I wish that the follow-up question regarding, hey, you put Link in a dress, like this could have been an opportunity to give your female audience a chance to see another perspective. I regret tying that to only a female audience because I think we all would have been interested in that. I don't think it was just that. So I apologize for missing that opportunity. But my second regret on this story is that I didn't push him a little more to explain his answer a little better. Like I can see there's a cultural divide, and he mentioned like at Nintendo, we have plenty of females who are working on this game and they don't seem to be bothered by it. And I guess I can understand that, but I kind of wish I would have gotten a little bit more from him. But at the end of the day, we're sitting there in this room, we're having a great conversation. And I said to myself, am I going to sit here and grill this man over this? I think I see his point, I have another line of questioning
and
I want to
it's-
jump to.
And it's not. It's like it's a little tough, right? Because I think you asking the question is a good move. Like you'll probably go back and go like, hey, that's actually kind of a cool idea, right? Like when heroes from around the world come together to save Hyrule, what if some of them were girls, right? Like I think that's a great question to ask, and I wouldn't have pressed it further either, because then you're playing armchair designer. You're saying like,
not,
the game you're creating is not what I want, which is not the case.
Well, and that's
right?
not the case, and I think what bugs me most, and I'm going to get this out here, is that we made no judgments. We ran the question, we ran the answer. That was it. We didn't try to imply anything, but it has turned into, for me, this experience where all of these people are asking, well, would you want Samus to be a guy, or would you want Mario to be a girl, or would you want Lara Croft to be a dude? And I'm like,
sure.
I'm not trying to challenge any one of those things. I asked a question based on what I thought, and he explained it, and we moved on.
Well, no, I mean, the question, what you want Samus to be a boy, is answered by Federation Force, where you can pick your character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the multiplayer concept, and like, by the way, like asking someone the question, hey, would you ever consider a Legend of Zelda game where Zelda is the lead, is a great question too, right? Like I don't know, I think it's this weird climate of where people get huffy every time the question is asked, and then journalists also get huffy every time the question is raised. Why are you focusing so much on this angle? Why people are focusing so much on this angle is because it's a time of change, and it's something that we haven't seen traditionally in games, and it's been a wonderful E3 to see games with female leads, see games with male leads too, and see female designers being presented. It just means that the industry is more aware that it's not a little boys club
not a boys
anymore.
club.
And
Well,
it's like, and that's great. And IGN is not a boys club anymore either. We used to have a site that was male lifestyle and babes IGN, and like honestly, I think it turned a lot of female visitors off from coming to this site.
Of course,
that
it
I
did.
helped create.
Yeah,
right?
because it was kind of vile.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's great that we can now have both sides of the story and have a much broader audience. And we just did the House Party Live event, right? And it was awesome to have female fans in the audience who enjoyed the content as well. So I don't know. I think people get riled up online because you're lacking content. You're lacking kind of like the background on why you're asking the question. It's a multiplayer game, and you love the concept of having the choice.
We on the other day, America had a triumphant victory where they legalized gay marriage across the country, right? And like most companies and most people did, lots of people did this thing where they changed their logo to a rainbow. And we did that with ours. And a lot of the comments on it, besides obviously hateful people and racists and bigots that come out on literally everything in the world, but a lot of people, so the thing that surprised me the most were a lot of people were saying like, IGN is about politics now. And it was like, no, but if you want video games to grow up, and you want video games to be realistic, and you want the mainstream to accept video games.
When you want more angles in your video games.
And you want more angles in your video games,
yeah.
then your video games have to sort of reflect the real world we live in right now. That is, even the cartoony ones have to sort of be inspired by what's going on in the real world. You can't say, I want more realistic video games, and I want video games to be taken seriously by the mainstream, but at the same time, shun the mainstream every time the mainstream has a conversation about something. Yeah. And the mainstream right now is having a conversation about equality with women. It's not just, and race, and gender, and it's and marriage, and sex, and it's not just something that we're fighting over. It's something that we're working on to make better for everyone. And I think that has to be part of our conversation with video games as well.
For sure. And the answer to the question is, of course, IGN is about people, right?
Yeah.
IGN is a website run by people. We want to make sure that our personalities are in our content as well. We're not a news feed, right? We want to make sure that people are connected to the content they write, that their opinions are seen, but also that the people are seen and heard, right? Like you're hearing us right now. And we are a site for people as well. Yeah. And so, that comes with more than just writing a news story about something. It comes with all the stories about how people experience games and what audiences are included when those games get.
And I think those audiences and all representations of audience need some sort of, they need heroes too, and they need protagonists. And I think that, I kind of cringe when I see 3 Links because I think it's a little lazy anyway. I didn't like 4 Swords 15 years ago before I even know what feminism was.
I totally agree with you. It would be much cooler if they were kind of like the supporting cast could join.
Yeah, or just like Link wannabes, to some degree, right? Like different people who just aren't.
Sure.
The mythos behind
a moblin, like have a party get
well,
together.
No,
like a good moblin.
The overarching myth of Zelda always revolves around like heroes who wear green.
Yeah.
And it's just like this could have gone both ways. And I'm not saying I'm disappointed because it didn't. I respect his answer. And at the end of the day, that was his answer.
Sure.
And if that's the game I'm getting, that's the game I'm going to play. But it didn't mean the question didn't deserve to be.
No, I think it's a perfectly fine question.
So I'm sorry. I'll let you finish that when I'm pushing.
Yeah, sure.
Forward.
Lastly, I feel like there are characters that are sort of defined by their male or female traits and characteristics, and these are like very deep characters in video games and in pop culture and movies. Link's not really one of them. Like, he's a kid and he doesn't have a voice, and he rolls around and he bumps into things, and he's kind of goofy and awkward, and he fights things. There's nothing explicitly male about him. That'd
be a twist if he wasn't male all along.
Of course, right. And when we saw the trailer for Legend of Zelda for Wii U, some people actually speculated that it might have been a female.
Yeah, and that started a whole big thing. I remember that.
Which is another thing. I was like, I don't understand the controversy there, because I saw that and I was like, I would be totally okay with that. Because to me, it's the thing that when you open up the door at the very end of every Zelda game and save the princess. Yeah. That is the least important thing about those games to me. It is about the journey, not the destination. Right. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't care at all if that became a female, and I don't understand why anybody would, because it's all about the adventure.
Yeah,
everyone should be able to
you could even play that storyline. It'd be like a cool reversal.
Yeah. I would love to keep this one going, but I do want to push this forward, though. But great point on that front. So next we have the great Miiverse redesign of 2015. Brace yourselves, guys. This is going to be one you're not going to forget.
I'd hate it. No,
I'm kind of joking. The Wii U and 3DS Social Network will look different after an update that's coming in summer 2015. They didn't put a date on it, but you will be able to save 100 screenshots in personal albums that other viewers will not be able to see. It won't be visible to other people who look at it. There's a new play journal where you'll be able to record your thoughts on games as you play them. It's similar to the activity feed, but for whatever reason, it's different in that you could post more frequently.
That's cool.
So this is going to replace your activity feed, and you can post a combined total of 30 posts or comments a day, not including in-game posts, which is weird because I guess some people were trying to do more. I'm not sure how much more that is than regular Miiverse, but if you're someone who uses Miiverse, I think Miiverse is a cool tool.
Yeah.
I don't go through it very often, but anytime that a thought sort of hits me while I'm playing a game, I like the idea of stopping and just quickly putting a note. I wish the process was faster, but outside of that, hopefully this is just as fast, because your criticism on Miiverse for 3DS was it is too slow, so why should I do it?
Yeah. I think it's same on Wii U. That was my main concern out of all of this. I was like, cool, is it quicker?
Yeah, I didn't say that, but hopefully we'll find out.
Yeah,
the look is nice. I like how it looks.
I'm happy that they're not giving up on it and that they're developing it. It's an example of a smart and unique online community that is completely family friendly and safe.
Looks a lot more like a Tumblr feed or something.
It looks great.
Definitely very like web designy
or Twitter or something.
That's great, and this is probably getting ready for the system being on multiple platforms, right?
Well, and I mean this has to be the first step for the DNA backend, right? Like whatever your membership registration thing is going to absolutely be tied to your Miiverse and your Nintendo Network ID, which are both important things.
But I always forget to post my thoughts on Miiverse. It's just something like when I'm playing. Like I already have these platforms where I share with fans on IGN and on Twitter, and it's like this kind of separate thing.
Yeah, but do you forget in your old age to pre-order your Dark Pit Amiibo? Because if you are going to pre-order your Dark Pit Amiibo, you can't, but you can only get it from one retailer.
In the U.S.
You like where this is going. In the U.S., it has been revealed that Dark Pit will be rolled out this month as a Best Buy exclusive. Those words don't go over well on this podcast. Any store exclusive.
Depends.
It depends. Well, wait a minute. So for full context for folks at home, both Per and Brian are done with Wave 4 and 5, technically, because you guys imported it.
Had some nice help from friends.
Yeah,
yes.
the hookups
I went on eBay. I spent
were real.
a little more money than I should have. But you know what? The last round, I bought a bunch through Toys R Us. And Toys R Us charges, I think, $13.99 for an Amiibo, and then like $8.
It's $1 more, and then
$1 more, and then $8 for shipping.
Jeffrey tax.
So the Jeffrey bucks, By then, you're like,
giraffe ate him.
Yeah, I'm like, I might as well get them from Japan because I free my amiibo from their plastic prisons. I let them out to breathe so I can play with them and then twirl them around and look at them.
Okay. Aren't you old for toys? No, I'm kidding. Keep going.
You see where I work?
Oh, man.
Yeah, I come in the
I'm
same
just
job as
kidding.
you every single
I
day.
know. I know. I'm just kidding.
I've seen your desk. You got
Do you
toys on
hear
your
that?
desk.
Harassment.
Harassment. Unbelievable.
Anyway,
Says the dude that lapsed on toys and then came back.
And then came
addict.
crawling back like
That's
a drug
right.
addict. I blame you, Francisco. If you're listening, I blame you 100% for this. But
Thank
anyway,
you, Francisco. You're the best.
So so Best Buy stores. So this is the part though that stinks. It is that you cannot pre-order this thing. You have to go to the retailer the day that it comes out. And this was announced via a post on corporate.bestbuy.com. Excuse me. Word to the wise. Get to your local Best Buy store early because there will be limited quantities as they will be sold on a first-come, first-served basis with a limit of 1 per customer.
Yeah. So camp
This
out.
is just unfortunate because, like, we talked to Reggie at E3 and we're like, hey, man, Amiibo are cool. Buying them, not cool. Like, that's essentially what it came down to.
Yeah.
And he sort of talked about how they're working very hard to replenish, how they do take it seriously. They're committed to restocking the store exclusives. And then when we took it to, well, no one should be up at 2 a.m. to pre-order these things. Are you working with retailers there? And he kind of threw the retailers under the bus on that one, saying it's on them. It wasn't on Nintendo.
It's kind of like Reggie. We talked about this.
So let's.
You told us this was
So
going to get
there's
better.
good news there, right? The good
Okay,
news
what's the
is
good news?
that
Help me out.
stricter limitations on how many you can buy.
Good one.
And that is,
All right.
in the end, that is a good thing, right? Because they are scalpers who buy 50.
Yeah, but
when
that
they
scalper
can.
just has
And
to get
that's-
5 or 6 friends to go with him now instead.
Scalpers
That's
don't
a
have
lot
friends.
more effort than just being able to hit a button and
When you
ticking
promise
up
those
the
friends
numbers,
money,
right?
no,
So that's a good thing. The way I buy stuff, like it's just not. It's not going to happen that I'm going to stand in line early in the morning at a Best Buy.
No.
I need to drive to work, right? Like it's just not going to happen. And
You know why? Because that is a waste of money. Because it's just money you're not making by being at work. People take off of work and they go wait in line for Amiibos.
Yeah.
You didn't get a deal anymore. You screwed that up. Like that's why I don't mind going on Play Asia or eBay or some import site or hitting up somebody and being like, "Hey, can you help me out with this?"
Yeah.
Because in that way, the amount of now all 4 of those figures are on my shelf. No, I don't even have to worry. I'm stress free. They could be like, oh, the next one is Radio Shack exclusive. The next one there's one dumpster in Iowa where you can get them. I don't have to worry about any of that. People are fighting to the death, and I get to step back. It's not worth it. It is
But you
not.
you have to pay more.
But you pay more by standing. If you have to wait somewhere at 2 o'clock in the morning,
I agree with this problem.
You are paying with your life.
we pay Brian by the hour.
You're paying with your life. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man.
No, but there is the devil's advocate approach is that anything that whenever you put a big effort into acquiring something, it'll be special to you.
Yeah.
Like if you stood in line and you had fun waiting in line maybe with some people and then you get your hands on something that everybody else has a really hard time finding, that item is super special to you. Right? And that's
okay.
So no, that's the other thing though. You forgot. You kind of hinted at it, but waiting in line is still waiting on the off chance that you might get one.
And that's the issue, right? And that's where I'm saying, like, I'm sad that it again said limited quantities because, like, somebody who just really is nervous wants to stand in line to get it, make sure he's got it on day one.
And I'm glad
it's a
Nintendo's
different story from
replenishing them, but it doesn't seem like it's fast enough. We're not waking up every week and hearing, "Hey, Best Buy got more."
But we are seeing
we're seeing
reissues, the different eyeball villagers popping up
Forehead
everywhere. The forehead edition is there.
Sorry, that was a really mean way to put it. No, I'm glad that those happen
like
too.
Wii Fit trainers are popping up now more often, which is good because Mario Maker, he actually works.
It's going to do something.
I put it this way: if you put 100 people in line outside of a Best Buy at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 5 o'clock in the morning the store hadn't opened yet, and I walked up to all of them and I was just like, "Yo, I'll give you $12. If you give me $12 right now, you will be magically whisked out of this, and there'll be a package in the mail for an Amiibo that costs slightly more money, but you can eat breakfast in bed instead of in a parking lot." 99 of 100 people will go,
No, of course they would.
absolutely, get me out of this parking lot.
All right.
Yeah.
People are doing this because they have to, and they don't need to.
So why don't you two talk a little bit about, since we're talking about toys here, why don't you two talk about your
They're called
the
figurines.
latest
no, your Amiibo that you got. You both got. So what'd you get?
Dark Pit, Palutena, Ganondorf, And
Zero
Suit
Suit
Samus.
Zero Suit Samus.
So what's your favorite? What do you think? Get it out now.
In terms of quality, Palutena is far and away
huge.
Yeah,
She's
first of
got
all,
so many like pieces.
so
floating
articles
around.
of flair just
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
just a
She's got
ton
all
of stuff going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, she's got her like
crazy
weird
halo.
Greek headdress and like there's a plastic thing and like she's got all these just a big cape and cloak and wings
Yeah.
and all this stuff like that.
Yeah. She's showing a little too much
Like-
leg for me. Did you notice that?
Wow.
There's a crease on that dress that I swear, like, I don't know what someone was
Jose,
thinking.
Jose,
but
I don't want to point
pretty
this
up
out to you,
there.
but Donkey Kong is only wearing a tie. He's showing a lot of hair.
I just thought it was a little too much. But that said, I agree with you that the quality on
Well,
Palutena
they got
Yeah,
like
blew my
both
mind.
the Fire Emblem and the Kid Icarus worlds are very anime inspired.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
so that kind of like somewhat
So you
sexualized
put an
look
extra
works.
crease. You put an
It
extra
works with
higher.
They're generally doing
That's what they look
Jose and I
like.
talked about this, but they're generally doing a
Boys
better
wearing
job.
short pants too.
Yeah. They're generally doing a better job
want
of
bikini shoulder.
hiding the ice cubes and the pea stands and all the weird.
Except for
like,
Zero Suit
Zero
Samus.
Suit Samus looks like she's wearing a night dress because she has this like frozen legging on the side.
Not a big fan of it, and it's not see-through, so you're actually losing some of that kind of illusion of her standing on one leg.
Yeah, but
like
looking
that,
at
you
it
know?
from a forward perspective, you
Yeah.
don't notice it as much.
But-
It's really from the side.
No, but the
No, it
character looks
like
really
she's,
cool.
She's just chilling against the wall in Fendrana.
So I actually, so I actually really like that character, though. I think nice. I think Zero Suit Samus is my favorite out of the batch, just kind
really?
of like looks wise. And then Ganondorf actually looks really cool.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
He's awesome.
And he's
So I-
really big and
On my
looks really
shelf, I
cool.
put him next to Link and Sheik and Zelda
Yep.
and Wind Waker.
He's a hefty
Link.
one too.
And they just really look good together. It's like really cool to see. Like it's like wow, I suddenly have a really cool Zelda amiibo set.
Gotta
like,
keep Wind Waker Link away, otherwise
know.
sword in the head.
I know he's not.
Yeah?
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's dangerous.
He heard what happened to that last guy. All right, so
And then you got the Yoshi ones, right? Which we unboxed on camera.
Oh, yeah,
I
talk
didn't get
about that.
those yet.
There, yeah, we got the pink, green, and blue Yoshis.
those are the only three.
And they're really, really cute.
They're just unbelievably
yeah,
adorable.
And you know, again, my daughter loves them.
Yeah.
She thinks they're the best. I don't want to have a game
Does
to
she
use
love
them with
waiting
yet.
until October to play the game with them?
No, but she'll live.
I get it next month.
Don't they work as regular Yoshi amiibos in Smash Brothers and
They
stuff?
should.
Yeah, but that's not the same.
Yeah.
we already have it.
look at the disappointment on
No.
his face. That's not the
They're
same.
really cool.
What about
I mean,
Mario Party?
Huh?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time you played Mario Party 10?
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So yeah, it's a
Good
really
answer.
cool set.
Good batch.
Okay, so then on the Amiibo train, we spoke to this going back to our Shikata interview, which you should read. Just the general information we got out of him was really good. He talked about the online for Triforce Heroes. He talked about the origins of the project, Miyamoto's response to it. Like we got a lot of really cool anecdotes or details out of him. But he did say that there are no plans for Amiibo support in Zelda Triforce Heroes, which I was surprised because I feel like every big Nintendo game is somehow tied to Amiibo, and I'm kind of glad this one is not. I have to be honest.
Huh.
Why are you glad?
Yeah.
Here we go. His quote, I think it's really something as simple as this game isn't a natural fit for it, Shikata explained. I think that's because we're focused on giving players the ability to choose different outfits to impact their experience within the game. We didn't think Amiibo added anything other than what games were doing with it already. There's no reason to shoehorn it in.
Okay.
I respect that. Yeah. At the end of the day, if you didn't want to do like Marty pointed out to me, hey, this could have been an opportunity though that maybe you get a blueprint for like a Mario themed outfit in that game. And
That's
it does
exactly where
something.
I thought they were going with it. The
Yeah.
second we saw outfits, I was like, they're going to go Yoshi with this and just have you swap in skins and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like that wasn't original enough for this team, and I respect them for that. I actually think that's cool. And to be fair, I know earlier I just said it's hard to see big Nintendo games not have Amiibo support, but in Japan, Rhythm Tengoku didn't get any Amiibo support
Right.
at all. Although that is a Japan-only franchise, but for now. But let's just go there. And even on smaller games, Dr. Mario Miracle Cure, no Amiibo support.
No, but
I
that's
don't think it's
also-
expected of every game.
No,
is my
but
bigger
the
point.
Wii U, no matter what Wii U you have, the Amiibo will work with it. But the audience is split on the 3DS.
Right.
Sure.
The
Right.
puck isn't out. The hockey puck isn't out.
Okay.
And so I think it just adds more frustration and more elements to the market, more confusion to the market.
But would you be happier with just like putting it in everything? I don't think that.
No,
is the
no.
way I
I'm
wanna
saying
see
I
this
I
done.
totally understand why they're not full force on 3DS games
Okay.
yet. You know,
That's fine.
like. I mean, it's really Smash Brothers is one of the few games that supports
That's
it.
right. And the Animal Crossing game that's coming out in September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think as you see more and more games release, I think people just think about how to build it in. I get it. Like, you don't want to shoehorn it in, you just don't want to just add it just to add it. But it is such a nice little bonus, just, having that kind of like that little secret where you're like, I have these, and therefore I get something special.
It's definitely game by game, because like
it's cool.
third party wise, like that Ace Combat game on 3DS, something Horizon Plus had
that was stupid.
A bomber skin. I'm just like, this is
And a Pac-Man
dumb.
skin. Is that one of the only third-party games that work with Amiibo currently?
I think so.
There was another one. There was that fighting game.
Fighting
was it One Piece or something? Or,
Oh yes, in Japan, the One Piece game had
Yep.
Amiibo support. Good.
They're also
you forget things.
They're also some of the only third-party games.
Oh, well, that's a
reality.
separate issue. Okay, all right. So we're gonna end on a what if. So we kicked off this episode with Fire Emblem If impressions, and I have a what if for you guys because this dawned on me the other day in a text message with a friend.
Is this going to make me angry like the Metroid questions?
No, you and I talked about this. Yeah, no, you and I talked about this.
What if Yacht Club made Metroid?
You're more prepared for this than I think Brian is, so I'm sorry,
great.
Brian. I should have prepared you for this. So at E3, we saw Nintendo's digital event presentation with this Muppets collaboration with Henson Studios.
Oh.
Right? And if anything, coming away from E3, that was the best, most charming part of the message. Like we've constantly taken to task that, some surprises were missing, some games were cool in there, but regardless of the content, it's safe to say that the collaboration with Henson was a good one, right?
Yeah.
So we are in a year where Nintendo is talking more and more about being an entertainment company, about exploring IP expansion, about partnering with Universal to make attractions. So my what if question for you is, if you were Nintendo and you had a chance for another collaboration using Nintendo IP with Henson Studios, you could do like a direct to Blu-ray or a movie or a YouTube special, whatever, what would it be? Let's say you compare those two companies back together again to do something.
So I mean,
or would you?
I
you
would
not?
go for. I honestly would go for a Muppets game collaboration, or having, By the way, having Kermit in Smash Brothers would be freaking amazing. It'd be so good.
No, but I'm
talking
talking
about
like
bicycles.
You're
thinking the other way.
Nintendo. Yeah, have something make something for
Muppet
Nintendo.
Show could get a really cool game. You're talking about Rhythm Tengoku a lot. It's like a game that has you do challenges to have the perfect like Muppet Show would be really cool.
Okay.
You mean the other way around?
I mean the other way around. Used Henson Studios to expand existing Nintendo IP.
Oh, because I was thinking like Mushroom Babies. It's kind of like Muppet Babies, but it's all the Mushroom Kingdom characters in a nursery together getting into trouble.
Yeah.
No to that? All right. Well.
I like it.
That's
Thanks.
Is Miyamoto the nanny?
Oh, man.
Only if you can wear those high socks with the stripes on them.
Poison. I mean, the closest one is Star Fox, right? Like that's where you have actual puppets.
And it was inspired by Thunderbirds, which was a puppet show to a degree. Everything's retro, everything's in vogue. That was my first idea. Why not do some kind of a Star Fox show?
Yeah.
And just see if you can help boost that IP, make it more interesting and bigger.
I mean, it's like Pigs in Space.
Wasn't there that Japanese only Mario
Neku Mario Time?
Puppet
it's called
series.
Cat Mario Time in the UK. Yeah,
that's right. So there was that one. It was also like we had a quote. Unseen64 ran a story the other day, kind of talking about this. It was an IGN quote. We did an interview with Miyamoto way back in the day, and he talked about this game called Marionette.
Oh yeah,
do you
I
remember
saw
that?
Yeah.
Which was supposed to it was both like very simple and very complex. I think by complex, I think he meant like there was a control mechanism. For
Never
the
came out.
strings
Yeah,
got tangled.
Yeah.
Never happened. It was a concept of like what it's like to be a puppeteer, because Miyamoto for a while was sort of just like, I found a thing and I fell in love with it and I turned it into a game.
Marionette's awesome.
And it's a really cool idea. So I would love to see something like that concept brought back.
Okay.
Like we've never actually seen like a puppeteering video game. Like we've seen.
Well, I would argue Media Molecule's next game is that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. What's that called again? I forget.
Something.
Dream Magic.
Dreams.
Yeah, Dreams.
All right.
And there was that PlayStation game, that puppeteer game.
Oh yeah, the Puppeteer.
Yeah,
Good one.
But there's Gino
was it
from Super
called?
Mario RPG, who is a wooden puppet doll.
Yeah.
So
I think another collaboration with Henson Studios will make a lot of sense. It seems like it's a win for both companies. And a friend of mine pointed out to me, well, why wouldn't they do something with Robot Chicken? I was like, I think Robot Chicken is a little more irreverent. It's more about poking fun at the things that are part of a subculture or of a thing, versus like with Muppets, you're getting your target demographic again, which is to some degree kids.
Yeah.
We've talked on the show before that Nintendo is not as fond with the younger market these days. You're seeing hardcore Nintendo fans raise their kids on Nintendo stuff.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing kids constantly talk about Nintendo the way they do
Right.
about Minecraft. And things like
Muppets
that.
is adult entertainment, though. I mean,
Yeah.
But when Muppets is at its best, it's everyone,
yeah.
right?
Right.
It's just like
the
Nintendo.
movies certainly were more inclusive. Like the classic Muppet Show. I mean, there's just so much that just goes over kids' heads.
Yeah, I was
remember-
there. I
Yeah.
watched it. Yeah.
I remember growing up watching the Muppet Show with my dad, and he and I were laughing at totally different parts of
Yeah.
the show. And then I'd grow up and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, now I get.
Yeah.
Like that was actually really messed up.
I
Like,
love the Muppet
So
Show.
talking
It's
to Marty
just
though, he
really
did say, "Man, I don't know. Henson did the Dark Crystal, did all that stuff." I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, what about Zelda?
Yeah,
What about
totally.
a Zelda thing with puppets?"
Yeah.
puppet version. You know what? If they announce that, fans would freak out in a bad way.
think so.
I tell you now, people be like, "What? We wanted a live-action Zelda movie. We don't want a
He's
puppet
gotta be
show."
gritty and mature.
But
I'm not
man,
trying
that
to
would be
shoehorn
like,
this.
but a
Yeah.
Dark Crystal style thing would be freaking
I
awesome.
love
man.
that idea.
All right.
Dark
There you go.
Crystal is such a great
Cool.
movie.
So you at home, you listener, why don't you send us an email? Let us know, what would you do if you were Nintendo and you wanted to? Obviously, I'm not saying Nintendo should do this, but I think in this era of looking for other ways to use their characters, this could be cool. Why don't you send in an idea? Let us know if you can have one Nintendo IP in a Henson Studios collaboration. What would you do with it, and what would it be? Try and keep it short, please. Some of you send emails that are so long that there's no way to read them on the
tweet
air.
length.
Is that why
Yeah.
you never read them?
Sometimes. All right. But send those in, nvc@ign.com. Let us know what you think. I think that could be a fun conversation, if anything, just like this one was. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We're a weekly show on IGN, but we are, in fact, not the only show on IGN. And if you were at the IGN house party, thank you for coming by.
Thank you so
Oh, yeah.
much.
For saying
That was so much
hello,
fun.
That was
for
great.
supporting us, for coming from all over the U.S. mostly, but I met people
Australia,
from Canada,
Universe,
yeah.
Australia.
just space.
Yeah, an alien walked
Planets.
in. Yeah, it was like beyond. I was like, what?
Plutonians
Yeah,
in the building.
yeah. So thanks a lot for coming out and for supporting us, and we're definitely very, very happy that we get to spend time with you the way apparently you have been spending time in some degrees with the work that we do. Shout out to there is an NVC Video Game Club group that's on
book
Facebook that
club.
talk to us. Yeah,
Book
it's sort of
club
a
that
book
is
club
about games.
style. Yeah, you should check that out. Next month they are playing Super Metroid, which is really a game that is near and dear to us all, especially if you heard us go off about this whole Metroid thing earlier in the show.
Love it.
So look that up on Facebook. I believe if you look up NVC Video Game Book Club, it'll come up. Yeah, so check that out. What else? If you have feedback, send it on over to nvc@ign.com or head on over to iTunes. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. Lastly, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Pear at
Pair IGN.
You can find Brian Altano at
Agent Bizzle.
You guys are so low energy. And you can find myself,
got it all
out.
Jose_Otero on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening. And we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Wow, cut off.